Hello everyone and welcome to Willow Cove Crafts, my channel here on YouTube where I talk about knitting and sewing and my other crafty endeavors. My name is Emily and today's video is another installment of my Finish It or Frog It series where I go through all of my old knitting projects and decide whether to keep them or rip them out. And more specifically, today we are going to be talking all about shawls. As mentioned, this video is part of a series that I decided to do because I was feeling very overwhelmed by the amount of unfinished projects I had sitting in a pile in my closet. So in case you missed it, last month I went through all of my sweaters. I had a total of 12 sweater projects that I reduced down to 7, I believe. And this month I decided that I would go through all of my shawls and other neckwear type things. And today's video is going to be part 1 because I was organizing my whips, kind of getting ready to film this video, and I pulled out all of my shawl projects and I had 18 of them, which is way more than I anticipated. I thought I maybe had like 10 if you had asked me to give an estimate, but it was almost double that. And so what I'm gonna do is do a 3-part. I simply do not have the emotional bandwidth and the time, filming and editing takes a while, but to go through 18 projects in one video is simply too much. We would be here for hours. So I'm gonna do 3 parts, 6 shawls per video. So you can expect that the next coming weeks. And yes, very similar to my sweater videos. I will show you the shawl, talk about what yarn I used, try and remember when I started it, why I stopped working on it, and then we're gonna make a decision as to whether or not to finish it or frog it. And kind of looking through my pile of whips, I have a good idea about most of them, whether I want to keep them or finish them, but there are a few that are causing me an actual existential crisis. I don't know what to do with them. So I will definitely be looking for some advice and feedback from you all on some of these projects because they're causing me some major stress. I don't know how to handle them. So without further ado, let's get started. First up today is a wrap project, and if you have seen some of my past videos, you might recognize this one, and it is my half and half triangles wrap by Purl Soho. It's very large, so it's hard to show on camera, but it is essentially a giant square split down the middle on the diagonal, and you use 2 different colors of yarn for each half. So I started this in April of this year, so not too long ago. This one hasn't been hibernating for years and years like some of my other projects. And I have picked it up here and there over the summer and fall months. So it's hibernating, but like hibernating light, you could say. And I'm definitely gonna finish this one. Let me talk about the yarn real quick. So my first yarn, I'm completely done with the first triangle. Hopefully you can see that. This is Purl Soho's linen quill, and this color is honey pink. And then I am just about done with my first skein of the second triangle, which is also Purl Soho's linen quill in turmeric yellow. And it's a big old shawl wrap thing. Like I said, I'm definitely planning on finishing this one. It's just such a big project that sitting down and knitting on it monogamously is something my brain cannot comprehend. It's such a big project. I feel like it's one of those things that you maybe work on and off for a while until it's done, maybe more of a long-term thing. So I still really love this. I want it in my hand knit wardrobe. And this one doesn't actually cause me that much stress because I know it's gonna get done one day, and you know, I'll put it down for a couple months and then pick it up again. It's not, like I said, in complete hibernation. So this is gonna be a keep. This next one I am gonna rip out, but it's not an entirely sad story, so I will explain. I started knitting. I'm losing yarn balls in my lap, which is why I keep looking down. I don't know, this guy's just gonna go on the floor. I started knitting the Lunae shawl by Natasja Hornby this past June. So this is also a relatively recent cast on. I didn't get very far. I didn't ever even show it on the YouTube channel. I don't think I ever took any pictures of it for Instagram. I maybe posted about it to my stories, but I started this shawl on a whim, and it was one of those things where, you know, I definitely have a little bit of impulse control when it comes to casting on knitting projects, and I really want to start something, and so then I do, and it actually really stresses me out because I feel like then I have just like one too many works in progress, and I actually feel most comfortable with fewer works in progress, but I always really want to start new things and often give in to that desire. And then I start working on that thing, and there's a fluff. I start working on that thing and it stresses me out, if I'm being honest, because I know that what I really want to be doing is working on my old things and finishing them out. But the allure of fresh new projects is just too much for me sometimes, and I do give in. So anyways, I started this and got about this far and realized that I was getting really stressed out by this project purely because it was just one whip too many, if that makes sense. I don't know if anyone else feels that way. So I stopped working on it. I worked on it for maybe a day or two, and that's as far as I got. The yarn that I was using was Brooklyn Tweed Loft in, this is Old World. This is Snowbound. And this is Fossil. Very similar colors to the original shawl. If you've ever seen a picture of it, I'll probably have put up a picture at some point during this monologue. But I am gonna rip this out. I have, and this is another thing, I don't know if other people do this, because it like doesn't make a lot of sense, but it makes me feel better. So like I want to knit this shawl. I want to knit this shawl out of this yarn. I really, really love it. However, because I'm not super far, I'm gonna rip it out because this little piece of work is causing me, like, it's causing a cognitive load that I don't want in my life anymore. I just want to rip this out, have it be gone, and then when I'm truly ready to start this project, then I'll be able to start fresh and clean. It will feel completely brand new. And for that reason, I'm going to rip it out. And it is kind of a waste of time, I suppose you could look at it that way. I definitely would not rip out something that I had spent weeks and months working on, but like a couple days worth of work, I would rather rip it out and have it just be out of my head and restart it when the time comes than just have this little piece of knitting sitting around. Does that make sense? Does anyone else do that or think about things in that way? I'd be very curious to hear from you. So I'm gonna frog this, but you will see it again someday. I really, really love this shawl and I really, really love this yarn. And I think they're gonna be a really great combination. How many times can I say really? All right. Now we're gonna get into some interesting things. Those first two have been started in the last year, so relatively recent. And the next 4 shawls that I'm gonna go over today are quite old. Things I've never shown on the podcast. Some of these I don't even have pictures of on Instagram. They've been hibernating for a while. So the first one is this. This is the Rockin Rows pattern by Martina Behm. And I started this, I really don't know. If I had to estimate, I would say 2016 or 2017. I feel like with most of my old whips, I can look at them and there's some sort of memory attached to them. Like I can kind of remember what I was watching on TV at that time, what books I was reading, what was going on in my life. And that can kind of help me pinpoint when I started it. But I look at this shawl and nothing comes to mind. It's like I have complete amnesia over what was happening in my life when I started this. I don't know, which is why this is one of the only ones I can't remember when I started it. So we'll say it's old. If you can't remember when you started it, it was probably a long time ago. The 2 yarns that I was using to knit this was this variegated orange. This is Little French Meadow. I don't remember the base. I will go look that up and put it on the screen, but this colorway was Alohomora, like the spell in Harry Potter. And then I paired that with this gradient yarn from Wollelfe. This is called Fading to Gray. Clever. And as you can see, I started with the darker end and it's slowly getting lighter. I'm going to rip this one out. It's really cool. I still think this idea of like having a solid and then a gradient stripe is pretty neat. However, I'm just not like into this shawl anymore. I think generally I don't really knit to skein shawls anymore. I really like big, voluptuous shawls, something like I can really like wrap myself up and get cozy in. And I find that 2 skein shawls are just a little too small for my liking. I have quite a few in my, finished objects, my hand knit wardrobe, 2 skein shawls that I just don't really reach for. And it's purely a size thing. And like, you can kind of tell a little bit at the bottom that like, this is the point of the shawl. It's a triangle and this is the point. And you know, that's the whole edge of the shawl. So, you know, we can expect it to be about twice as big as this. And that's just like, it's not big enough for me. I'm sorry. Definitely big enough for other people, I know. And again, it's a preference. I just really like bigger shawls. So I'm gonna rip this one out. This is one where I don't really know what I'm gonna do with this yarn. They are both sock yarns. They do have nylon in them, so I could make socks. My hesitation is that it's cut. Each of these stripes, I cut the yarn. So while it is possible to make socks out of them, it's just like a bit of a pain because the yarn is cut and, you know, I'm gonna have to weave in ends. I don't think what I have left, I mean, maybe I could get a pair of socks out of each of these bits of uncut yarn. I don't know. And then also too, I have mentioned this before, but I don't really love doing variegated yarns for garments. I really only like variegated yarns for socks. So something like this is like just maybe a bit much. I just don't think I would wear this. So nothing against the pattern. It's purely a preference thing. I liked the pattern enough to start it, obviously, but when I really kind of think about it, I don't think I would ever wear this. So I'm gonna rip it out. If you have any suggestions for what I could maybe do with this yarn, given that it's cut and, you know, not something I would really wear, let me know. Right now, the number one choice is socks. So, yeah. Next up is the What the Fade by Andrea Mowry. And I am pretty far. I got through the entire brioche section and am onto the garter stitch. And I'm gonna keep this one. It's very pretty. I started this in, I think 2017. I went and had a look through my email for the receipt for this yarn. I specifically bought this yarn for this project and I think I cast it on pretty quickly after that yarn arrived. So we'll say like late 2017. The yarn I used from this was a kit I purchased from Stress Knits, and I don't remember the colorway names. It wasn't in my receipt. So that is a mystery. This is Stress Knits 75-25% sock base, 75% wool, 25% nylon. Sock base, which I don't think she sells anymore. But yeah, it's really pretty. It's this super subtle fade. You almost like can't even see where one yarn begins and one yarn ends. It's very soft and pretty. And I'm definitely gonna finish this one. I put it down because these garter rows are really long towards the end. I think you end up with something like 500 plus stitches towards the very end. I have fluff on my face. So yeah, ultimately I think this one would wrap up pretty quickly. If I worked on it, I could probably finish it in a week or two. And yeah, it would be a really great thing to pick up one of these days when I just need some mindless garter knitting. And this one would be finished. And, you know, opposite end of the spectrum of my last shawl. This one takes, it doesn't use the whole skein, but it does take 6 different colors, and it is a very sizable, big shawl. This is much more the size that I like my shawls to be. So I'm gonna keep this one. I'll finish it up someday. I don't know when. All right, this next one has caused me a lot of stress over the years. I look at it and I don't know what to do with it. The reason I am a bit stressed about it is that I am almost done with it, but I don't know how often I would actually wear this piece. So, like, I want to rip it out, but I'm also heartbroken at the idea of ripping it out because I did spend a lot of time on it. That is, and I'm in the middle of a row, so you're gonna get some of that. So this is the Surprise Party Shawl by Helen Stewart. It's a semicircle shawl and it's got a bunch of fun texture, some contrast colors. And I knit this out of a kit I got from Loco. She made some yarn kits specifically for this shawl. Again, I want to say like mid to late 2017, not quite sure when, but the kit was called I Can't Even. I think she did this like in collaboration with the Grocery Girls or something. I don't remember, but this is the main color. And then I don't remember the contrasting colors, but there's supposed to be 5 contrasting colors, and there are, but you can't really see. And that was like maybe part of the reason I was a bit disappointed is a strong word, but you know, the shawl is supposed to have 5 contrasting colors, and these first 2 were so close to each other and to the main color that I think they get a bit lost, especially in comparison to these bottom 3, which are very striking. And I'm on the border. It's almost finished. But I don't know if I'll wear this ever. Semicircular shawls are not my favorite. I will wear them. It's not a complete deal breaker for me. This shawl is a little busy. Again, I knit that base color is variegated. It's a little more subtle, but it is a variegated yarn. And it's just like, it's a little bit busy for me. But it is almost done. I do wonder if I should finish it, or I could rip it out and make something else with this. I'm not quite sure what. There's 3 skeins of this yarn in here, which might be enough to make a sweater, actually. I kind of imagine maybe pairing this with a mohair to lighten the color a little bit and blend the color a little bit. Again, this is speckled, but it's not super in your face, or it's not super bold. And so I think like if I did pair this with a mohair, it would tone it down a little bit, and it would maybe be something that I would wear in a sweater. And I do have enough to potentially turn this into a sweater. So I'm on the fence about this one. Honestly, I knit it so long ago that ripping it out might not be super sad, because I don't even remember knitting this. Like, it was so long ago. I remember knitting it, obviously, but like the concept of how much time it took me is kind of lost at this point. So let me know what you think. Keep it or rip it out and pair it with a mohair and make a sweater. I'm definitely leaning towards did you hear that? My refrigerator makes really loud noises sometimes. Anyways, I'm definitely leaning towards ripping it out and making a sweater. But I'm gonna hold off on the concrete decision on this one. And again, I would love to hear your thoughts. It would make a nice sweater. Maybe I could add like some contrasting like cuffs with the contrasting colors, like a neckband or something. I think it could be really cute as a sweater and would definitely be something I'd wear more. Definitely leaning towards that option, but I am curious to get your thoughts. Please help me. All right, I have one more shawl for you today, and it's definitely a keeper, and it has so many wonderful memories tied to it. And that is the, let me pull this up, Amazing Seed Stitch Wrap by Purl Soho. So I decided to make this. I started this again in 2017. I was knitting a lot of shawls in 2017. But I first came across this pattern very early on in my knitting career. Like a lot of new knitters, when I first started, I was getting all of my yarn from Michael's, which is the big box craft store. And I remember too, when I first started knitting, I was finding all of my patterns off of lionbrand.com. And the reason for that is my friend who taught me how to knit, that's where she found her patterns and where she got her yarn. And so that's what I did because that's all I knew about. And then one day, and this was probably like 2012, 2013, I was just looking online at some knitting stuff and I came across the Purlby, which is Purl Soho's blog. I don't think it's called the Purlby anymore. I think everything is just branded as Purl Soho, but back in the day, their blog was called the Purlby and they had so many beautiful patterns. And I looked at the yarn and it was kind of my first exposure to more luxury yarns, and I just couldn't believe the difference between the yarn that they used at Purl Soho compared to some of the stuff at Michael's. Not that there's anything wrong with Michael's. I still really like some of the stuff from like Lion Brand and like Patton's Croix at Michael's. There's some really great stuff there. But it is a stark difference, right? I don't think there's any denying that. There's definitely a cost difference, that is for sure. I couldn't believe how expensive some of these yarns were. Now, like, that's kind of what I'm used to, so it's not as shocking. But at the time, I was like, wow, like, also, why is that skein of yarn $30? That's crazy. And anyways, I came across the Amazing Seed Stitch Wrap, and I thought it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. The colors were just like so stunning and vibrant and saturated, and I was obsessed with this wrap. And I really wanted to make it, and at the time I was in college, or like maybe just out of college. I didn't have a lot of money. And I saw that Purl Soho had kits for it, but it was very expensive, way out of my price range. And so I didn't buy it. And for years and years, I just like would go look at the Amazing Seed Stitch Wrap and just want to make it. And I really wanted to make it out of the yarn that they had used because I loved the color palette so much. And then in 2017, I started a current job, and that came with a bit of a raise. And I decided as a treat, after about 5 years of looking at this wrap online, that I was going to treat myself to a kit with the yarn. And so that's what I did. And it was not cheap. But I'm an adult and can spend my money how I want. So, but yeah, I started it. There's 11 different skeins of yarn. I'm gonna put them in the show notes below the video. I'm not gonna go through them all because there's a bunch of different kinds, but I will put them in the show notes so you can see what they are. But you know, it's a pretty basic pattern. It's a big rectangle and you just do seed stitch and you knit until you run out of your yarn. And it's pink right now, but then it transitions into some whites and greens and then blues. I'll have posted a picture of it in case you've never seen this before, but the yarn is very, very soft. It's some cashmeres, some like very fine merinos. It's, like I said, it was a splurge, and I do intend to finish this someday. It is a bit, you know, at this point in my life, I do like more softer tones, and so this hot, hot pink is not really in my wheelhouse. However, I just get the warm fuzzies when I look at this. It reminds me of when I was a new knitter and just kind of learning about everything, and, you know, starting new projects was even more exciting then because I was learning about it and just like amazed at watching the fabric come together. And there's just a lot more like wonderment to knitting back then, and this makes me think of that. So I'm gonna keep it, I'm gonna finish it. It's worsted weight, and so it does knit up pretty quickly. It is seed stitch though. As we know, that slows us down, but I would love to finish this someday and just have it as a cozy, snuggly thing and have those memories of when I was a new knitter. And that is everything I have to show you today. Again, I did 6 shawls today, and then the next 2 weeks I will do parts 2 and 3 where I go through the rest of them. 6 a piece. It worked out nicely that way, nice and even. If you liked today's video, please give it a thumbs up, leave it a comment. Don't forget to subscribe. Those things really help to boost my channel and get my videos out there. And yes, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week for part 2. Bye, everyone.